Welcome, and thank you for joining me and my roommate Jake here for what will be the second installment of Conversations with me, I guess, and what will most likely be the most technically proficient episode that will ever exist.
Oh, don't say that.
for the near future. So, brief introduction. Jake Susla is an audio engineer working and residing in Portland, Maine. He works weekends doing live sound for a band called Wavelengths. He works part-time as an audio tech for PSAV and also for a recording studio in Portland known as The Studio. He has his own YouTube channel called Susla Audio where he makes videos about his work and sound in general as it relates to humans. Jake is also my roommate. He rounds out the trio of Evan and I. And he's also one of my best friends. And we've known each other for how long?
Going on, let's say, 20 plus years?
We're flirting with 2 decades.
Yeah, and considering we're pretty young, that's pretty much most of our lives, I'd say.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So, thank you so much for being here, dude.
Thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
First off, do you want to explain your choice of mug?
Okay, well, I'm going to rep my own brand here, Susla Audio Mug. My mom actually got this for me for a birthday present. I thought it was a really sweet idea. The only thing is I tend to critique things a lot. As you can see, it's a bit more of an oval, and my actual branding is more of a circle figure. But, I'll give my mom the credit. It was a thoughtful gift, and I love the mug, so.
Holly's a really nice woman.
She is a nice woman.
That's the perfect segue into my first question, which is why you wanted to start your own YouTube channel.
Well, it kind of goes in a lot of directions in terms of why I wanted to start my own YouTube channel. I guess the biggest thing was to kind of reach out to other people, and I wanted to kind of create a community around audio engineering. Now, I won't get too into it right now, but like audio engineering takes a long time to get good at, and being as young as I am, I have a lot to learn. So not only did I want to share what I knew about audio, sound, and music with people, I also wanted to kind of reach out to people and get ideas myself and kind of continue the learning process for myself. And so far through this medium that YouTube provides, kind of helps me reach out to people, it's been a big learning experience so far. So that's another big reason why I wanted to start a YouTube channel and social media in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually curious, like, how would you describe, like, audio engineer? Like, because that's one thing I hear, and, like, I have a conception of what you do, but maybe some folks, audio engineer, like, what is that? Are you building audio?
You can literally break it down into the two words that it is. Engineering, I don't necessarily see it as building, but solving problems. Like, you have this thing that you need to accomplish, and you solve the issues that are in the way to get it done. And audio, obviously, sound, music, and just, like sound in general, like I said. So essentially, it's problem solving with sound and audio. There's a lot of issues that are inherent in music production and sound engineering in general, and that's essentially what my job is, to make sure that it goes smoothly and it sounds good.
That's awesome. What's the favorite video that you've made for your channel so far? Like, what's the one you think has come out the best, or that you enjoyed making the most?
Well, there's been the one that I've had the most fun with is the ones that have gotten the most views and kind of the biggest reaction, obviously. I wouldn't necessarily say they're my favorite videos. That's actually a very tough question now that I think about it. Probably some of my favorite videos are actually probably some of the ones that I most recently made, which were on, how we perceive frequency, amplitude, and all of those other ones. Even though they've had a very small view count, just a couple people have watched them, honestly. I think those are some of my best quality ones, because I've actually organized them and really thought about how to talk about what I wanted to talk about. and did a lot of different drafts of the script. I had like 3 drafts of the script. So in terms of how they came out, I'm actually very proud of them, even though they haven't got the biggest reaction. But I think it's always fun when you get a good reaction from the community around you, and that's also very enjoyable. So.
Well, yeah, I remember like you talking about posting videos to like different threads and putting them in like different like spaces and like getting that feedback. Like, what is it like when like someone watches your video and like offers like critique and stuff? Like, has it been mostly positive? Like, and like what is the response from people? How, like, what's the importance of that?
Generally it's been pretty positive. Although I had like a couple instances where there have been some pretty negative responses, and at first it's like, yeah, this is tough to deal with. And you definitely, need to kind of check your ego, and you're like, okay, wow, that's very humbling for, somebody to say, hey, you need to switch this. This isn't right. Even when it's something that you've worked so hard on. But it's also, you kind of just have to take a step back and say, okay, what did I do wrong? How do I fix this? And kind of turn it into a learning experience. But yeah, it's also, I'd say the majority has been pretty positive in terms of, comments, and like my like to dislike ratio is pretty good. But yeah, otherwise it's really interesting just to kind of deal with some of those, like, not hateful comments, but very particular critiques that can be sometimes a little bit aggressive, because like people are passionate about what they like, and even with things like audio, I definitely put out my opinion on some things, and people have definitely disagreed with me.
What's like the worst one where you're just like, you're going up for like the dunk and something just like slams you back down?
Oh man, so I made this digital audio workstation guide which covered all of the digital audio workstations out there, and I spent a lot of time on this, researching and just kind of learning about all these different softwares so that I could kind of lay it out for people and that are trying to get into audio engineering, and which digital audio workstation is going to be the best for you. So I tried to list them out with the positives and negatives. And obviously, some people are going to be pretty passionate about the one that they use. So I had one guy come up to me or comment in my video that essentially some of the information that I had was wrong. Like straight up wrong. And he said, you really poorly researched this, so on and so forth. Like, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right. And at first I was like, whoa, that's really intense. And I later learned that the information that I found was incorrect, because it was they had just come out with a new version recently within a couple of months. So what I was reading was old information. So that was really interesting. And as much as I was at first like taken aback and I was like, oh geez, I messed up, I kind of switched around in a little bit and kind of realized, this is something that I can learn from. This is something that I can do more research on and actually like redo this video, make it better, and kind of just hold my videos to a standard, like a higher standard. So in the end, that first like really intense critique of my video was, in end, it kind of came to the point where I was like, okay, this is something that's going to actually better my channel in the future. It took a little while to kind of figure that out, but emotions aside, like, I think it was a good thing. I still haven't gotten that new video out, but I'm thinking about it, thinking about how to redo it.
With the corrections and stuff?
Yeah.
That's really hard, is like turning the negative into a positive and just being like appreciative of that. But that's cool, man.
Yeah.
And so a lot of your passion around like where you are now in terms of being an audio engineer, like if I'm right, came from just playing music in the beginning, which I believe you first started with guitar.
Yep. Yeah. When I was 10 years old, I was going through just, one of the back rooms in our house, and I found my mom's old nylon string guitar, I just picked it up and started playing, and probably a week later I started a band with some of my friends. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't really play any instruments, but we had fun, and that kind of sparked my interest for writing music and then eventually recording my own music. And then that interest in recording my own music turned into audio engineering and everything. So
What made you stick with it? Like, just music in general. Like, what kept you, I guess, like, attached to it?
I guess the idea that there's really no end in terms of what you can learn. And for me, audio engineering has been something that was not really natural for me. And it's been a struggle for a while, but there's something about it that knowing that you can always be better, and that it's really hard to build up the skills to do it efficiently. You need to be, training, you need to be doing it regularly. And one of the things I've been thinking about recently, it's not just knowing the knowledge of the skills, it just takes time. And just something about the challenge for me and accomplishing, new milestones in audio is really motivating and keeps me consistently interested in continuing on. And in terms of music, it's just like, it's a release. It's your own, like writing for some people, or anything creative, painting, art. It's just a way to express yourself. And I've always felt very connected to music, and I've always been, listening to music. I've definitely cried listening to songs sometimes just because it got me so emotional. So I can really connect with that medium of creativity.
Okay, welcome back. I am still learning how to use technology, apparently. But we know what the problems are, so that's the most important part.
And we can potentially edit this out, so all of this isn't necessary.
None of this is necessary. But yeah, so we're rolling back into it. I think I had asked you, maybe that'll just become a feature of the show, is that episodes will just randomly end at any time with absolutely
and cut.
Just kind of like life. One day life just ends.
Just ends.
That got really dark out of nowhere.
Should we talk about life?
We are talking about life.
That's
true. We were actually in the middle of going really deep on you. we were gonna. I asked you, what was the last song that made you cry?
Oh yeah. Oh jeez. That's honestly. There's a lot of Rise Against songs that make me like really emotional. It's just like general punk rock, but there's a couple of them that are just like really powerful to me. Either that or, I don't know, a lot of like metal, honestly. There's some like metal tunes, like progressive metal, not like screaming death metal, but Periphery. I'm not sure if anybody watching this would know who Periphery is, but they have some pretty beautiful songs. And there's one called Catch Fire that's pretty deep and pretty emotional, makes me emotional. It's just like, I don't know.
Word.
Yeah. There are definitely quite a few out there that have like got me teared up, and like good teared up though.
Yeah.
Like this feels good.
Cathartic.
Yeah.
Word. Thanks for going deep with us.
Yeah, trying.
And then so I know you played music for a long time. We played in school bands together. When did you know that you were more interested in recording music than performing? Because I remember that Jake in high school was played trumpet in jazz band and wind ensemble, and played guitar for a Beatles band in high school. So I was surprised, definitely. I thought you were going to go on to be a musician or something. But
yeah, like I said, what happened was actually this thing that we're recording with right now, this Onyx Blackjack. I bought that when I was probably 17 years old, and I started recording my own music. It's actually still out there on SoundCloud somewhere, I believe. And I was writing a bunch of songs. I had, probably at least 20 songs that I'd wrote, and I wanted to turn it into an album. So I decided to go out and use the Onyx Blackjack, use GarageBand, which is like the standard Apple MacBook digital audio workstation. I'm going to revert back to that if you didn't know what I meant earlier. But yeah, I used GarageBand and kind of just started at it, and after my first album that I did by myself, it was horrible. I was like, that was really fun. And the next one I did, I got better. I was like, this is really cool. Like I'm seeing the progress as I go. I'm having fun doing it. So like I said, for me, it's all about accomplishment and getting better and just continuing to push myself and learn as much as I can about it. Because like I said, it just seems like endless things to learn, and you can never get to a point where you're going to feel, like there's a ceiling or anything. So.
Word. So you're trying to get plugged into the Portland music scene at large. How would you describe the music scene in Portland? Portland, Maine, the East Coast Portland.
How would I describe
Portland?
Honestly, from my experience, it seems like it's pretty tight knit. I mean, per genre, obviously, or general genres. There's this place called Live at 212 in Westbrook, I believe, and they have the usual crowd there. They have a lot of bands that play there, come back, regularly, and it seems like a really tight knit community with the local bands. And I feel like it's kind of the same for Portland, because a lot of the bands play with each other at these shows and will be in touch with them, like with each other. And if they get another opportunity, they might reach out and be like, hey, do you want to come play the show with us, have another act? So it seems like a pretty tight-knit community. And just by knowing one band, you start to meet a couple others, and like I said, it's still kind of small in terms of, relatively, I guess. But it seems very tight-knit, and I think that's kind of cool. And there's a wide range of genres, too, I feel, that are playing around. So that's awesome. I love seeing, diversity in terms of genre.
Yeah, we got all kinds of things going on.
So
I feel like we have, for the size of the city we live in, there's a ton of venues.
Yeah.
I think the one I think I know your favorite sound, which is Portland House of Music.
Yeah.
Those guys do the best job with sound, so we've heard. Other venues that you think fly under the radar that do a really good job.
Well, I mean, I think Blue can sound really good. I've only mixed that venue a couple times, and I'm not too familiar with the whole setup. But I think if I was there a lot, just a small venue, kind of a smaller sound, having like a folk band there, you can get it to sound really great. And I mean, obviously, I think the best sound is not necessarily Portland House of Music, but it's the Merrill.
Oh, okay.
But that's also on like a different level.
Yeah.
The Merrill Auditorium is amazing. I've heard the most transparent music there in terms of sound, the most transparent work that I've experienced, really, which is amazing. But yeah, I think Portland House of Music in terms of like live bands playing has been really great. There's been a lot of good sound there, and I've always been generally pleased versus some other places that have pretty inconsistent sound. But
what do you mean when you say transparent?
As in, you don't really even know that there's like an audio engineer, or if you closed your eyes, it would feel like you're listening to a CD. Not live. You're just hearing the music for what it is. It's like, oh, there's all these microphones and stuff, but just getting rid of that and just having a good sound, balanced, clear. That's what I kind of mean by transparent.
Word.
Yeah.
You've worked with, in your sort of, what is fair to say, like, limited experience, like, so far.
Absolutely.
I've heard you work with, like, a number of bands. You've already had, like, 100 bands would probably be maybe on the higher end, but, like,
oh yeah,
at least you've worked with, like, 40, 50 bands, haven't been doing this for, like, so long. I'm curious, like, what is it that makes a band successful? Like, what do they need to do? From your experience, what do they do to, like, be successful? Because I know you've worked with both spectrums. Like, what is it that makes a band kind of stand out?
That's a pretty big question. I guess if we're gonna, like, how do you want to tackle that? Do you want to tackle it in terms of, like, marketing, or do you want to like, in terms of sound? I'm guessing, like, what makes a band sound good enough so that they can be marketed, right?
Yeah, I didn't even think about, like, I wasn't thinking of the marketing.
Because
no.
Yeah, there's a lot, like, on the marketing side, but I'd say in terms of sound, really kind of creating their image. Everything is about finding your niche, essentially. When whatever career path you choose to do, it's all about kind of finding where you belong and really focusing on that and really kind of honing in on that one thing. And if a band can find their image and find their sound and then get really good at it, I feel like that's when they start to find an audience, like a loyal audience that loves them, like wants to hear all of their music that they come out with, and then it starts to build. Not everybody's gonna like every single band, so you really just have to find those people and then play the music that you obviously love. Obviously I think bands should play the music that they enjoy playing. They need to love it to write good music in general, but I think really finding that genre and focusing in on it and kind of just creating that image for themselves with their music, like, this is what our band represents. There's also a lot that goes into good songwriting, but I think a good band knows what kind of music they play and how, like, the audience that they're playing for generally. So
it's funny though that you bring up the marketing piece, because I know the band that you work with, their marketer is, like, super focused and like very attentive. But yeah, as bands try and make money in it's, like, kind of a weird time, like, with streaming and everything. But you are remaining pretty confident. Like, if bands can get on tour, then they can remain successful. Is that like true, do you think, in your estimate?
It's different. There's a whole new game out there to be played. It used to be, a band going on tour would be the only way to really build an audience. And that's just not the case anymore. Really, the best way to do it is to get a online presence as a band. Obviously, sell your music online. Streaming is never going to be that profitable for the band. I think I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's like every 10,000 plays on Spotify, it's like a couple cents,
Jeez.
So it's really not that much in terms of streaming. But, bands can sell merch. Bands can, like, sell CDs and all of that stuff on their site, and that's when they get the fans who want to keep listening to their music. Even touring is not all that profitable for bigger bands, like what I was saying earlier, Rise Against. I'm sure they're huge, they have a huge following, but they're not, like, rich people. They make a living off their music, but they're not rolling in the dough. So it's interesting. It's not like what it used to be, huge rock stars going on tour, and making millions and all that stuff. So yeah, it's definitely changed. but in a way, it's also become easier to make your living due to social media if you do it right. That's the whole marketing side, which I'm still learning very much so. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's interesting to see how social media and just the online presence of a band has changed the way audiences interact, with their bands that they like.
Yeah, it's cool. It always just amazes me, like, as bands get popular. It's just like, how does that happen? There's so many people. How do you rise above just everyone's doing so much?
A great example of that is the Chainsmokers. They had one viral song.
Yeah.
And from there, they had the opportunity. They had the opportunity to
I'm not
make
laughing
more
at them.
music.
Yeah.
And and then they just kept coming out with good music. They knew their sound. They knew their audience.
Yeah.
And now they're successful. They come out with at least like one new hit every year. So.
Love them or hate them.
Yeah.
They were just two dudes.
Yeah.
One of them, you grew up with his brother?
His cousin.
Yeah. We met their mom.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I did think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's from Freeport, Maine, Drew Taggart.
She's a lovely woman.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It's really cool to have somebody that's made it big from a local place, for Maine. You don't hear a whole lot of people from Maine besides like Stephen King, the general people. But
we're changing that.
Changing it.
We're going global.
Yeah.
I think that was awesome, man. I think we're probably going to move towards wrapping it up before we get cut off. I'd love to segue into like a natural goodbye. And yeah, we're pushing it. So I want to thank my technical assistant as the first one ever. She has been promised a place on the show. So you'll meet her eventually. That's a promise to everyone watching. You will meet her. So I want to shout out to my technical assistant for that. And thank you for being on here, man.
Absolutely. It was fun.
I really appreciate it. Anything else you want to add? You want the final word?
No, not really.
We pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.